So let us come out from the ecosystem functional aspect of ecosystem, that is the nutrient cycle, and let us go into a little bit deeper about the ecological hierarchy and the interactions happening at the different levels. Okay. Uh, First of all, in order to understand that what all the interactions are happening at different level, it is important to understand what ecological interaction itself means. So, with the ecological interaction, what it means that any organism that are linked with biotic and the abiotic factors, right? Now, here there are two examples. One is a very recent example from 2020 paper where primary producers, that could be any algae, let's say, because of the increase in the carbon dioxide, a process called as ocean acidification occurs in the ocean, and because of ocean acidification, the iodine content of the seaweed increased, or let's say iodine content of the algae increased, and at the same time polyphenol content is also increased. Now when we look into the seaweeds or when we look into the algae, they also produce a number of polyphenol compounds. So if the iodine is increasing and if the polyphenolic contents are increasing, right, so that is what impact of abiotic stress or abiotic factors on the algae. So since algae is on also an organism, so that is the first level of interaction. So we can say that ocean acidification affects the physiology of algae. That is an abiotic interaction. Now what happens, we know that in the food wave, what will happen, this algae will be eaten by the zooplankton or by the first level of consumer, that also we can call it as second producers. Why? Because this is going to be fed by the second consumer, that can be called as tertiary producers, right? I hope that concepts are clear and you are not confused. So what happens, that the phenolic compounds, because of the increase in phenolic compounds, these first level consumer also have high iodine and also have high polyphenol compound, right? And then that can impact. So because iodine, we don't know what this polyphenol compound is going to do on the growth and survival and the basic metabolism of the, of the primary consumer, that could have an impact, right? So first is that abiotic interaction to the algae, and second is that biotic interaction in the food web because of the algae having the high polyphenol compound. I hope it is clear. So that is why the ecological interaction is important, and that is why that is what ecological interaction means. This is the first example. Second example, you can see that again, because of the increased carbon dioxide, because of the ocean acidification, this Nemo, okay, all of you know this Nemo, right? So this Nemo in the acidified water has lost its chemosensories. So because of the disruption in the chemosenses of this clownfish may not be able to identify where the coral reef is or where the anemone is and where are the predators. So this kind of disruptions, if it happens at the in the water, that affects the whole ecosystem, because instead of Nemo going to the reef, it will go to the predator, and predators will be have the last laugh, right? It will be, I mean, the fish will be very happy. So that is why that is what ecological interaction means. It means the interaction at the abiotic factors to the organism or biotic factors in the different trophic levels, be it from the producer to the consumer or be it from primary consumer to secondary consumer, right? I hope that's clear now. Further, to understand it even better, what we have is another example which says that limiting resources shapes the population growth. So here what we have seen an example where two different trophic levels are involved, or at least two different species are involved. Now ecological interaction is not only happening at the different trophic levels, it can also happen within the species at the different populations or within the same population. One such, I mean, why it can happen? It can happen because of the limiting resources, right? Limiting resources which shapes the population growth. And limiting resources can be anything. We know in the ecology that all the organisms are fighting against each other or living together for food, for space, and for nutrients, right? If these three factors are there in the non-limiting manner, there won't be any competition. But since that these things are in the limiting resources, that shapes the population growth. This one particular example, which is a very old, it's close to 40 years old article, 43 years old article, which says that there is a competition in the population of the this Triticana, that is a shell, right? This shell is fighting in order to do the settlement. If you see this particular graph, you have a distance in meter from the reef edge. So this is a leeward side. Leeward side, it means that toward the land, and this is a seaward side, that means toward the sea. Now, whatever the reason is, I don't know. Maybe that could be because of the rough sea in this particular side, or that could be because of the further abiotic factors in this particular side, low pH, salinity, whatsoever be the reason, or maybe some other species which are fighting in this particular area, right? We don't know. We don't have to even consider this. What we have to consider here is that there is an intra-specific competition for the settlement of this particular shell in the leeward side, because you see zero is here, right? If zero is here, it means the sea is starting from this side, and now all the settlement, all the fighting is happening to settle in this leeward side. So we can say there is a fight for the space. So these individuals of a single population of the bivalves, okay, they are fighting for settlement in the leeward reef side, right? And what could be the consequences of this competition? This competition can lead to the density dependent mortality, because in order to acquire, or in order to attach in one particular location, more and more bivalves will come and settle down. Because of the high density, the juveniles are the first one to die, because they are adults are more resilient for these kind of factors, whereas juveniles are not. Second is that also because of crowding, there could be morphological deformations, right? Third, that there would be a regular random or agrifold distributions, right? So it could be a very random, or it can be aggregated distribution. It means that all are attaching above each other, next to each other in a very crowded manner. And that because they are fighting for the space, then they are also fighting for the food, because if they are not moving away, means they have to fight also for the food. So it can lead to a slower growth of the due to the competition, right? So this is what ecological interaction means. Ecological interaction means any interaction which is happening at an individual scale, or happening at a different food chain level, right? So this is one example. So let us go to something different. What could be the possible implications for ecological interactions? We will understand in a way that suppose in this particular example, if no individual are leaving this side, right? What will happen? As I said, that there will be crowding effect, morphological deformations, and then there will be slower growth. So what will happen? Eventually, some of the individual may want to colonize, or may want to occupy some different area, maybe in the top side of the reef, or maybe moving away into the different reef, right? Different reef this side, or maybe different reef this side, right? So what does it mean? It means that there is a possible uh, possible habitat niche shift, right? Because they are not going very far in the habitat niche shift. So don't worry, I will come back again in this particular slide, but let us go directly from here to there. So what are the possible implications of ecological interaction? So suppose if some of the bivalves in the first example, which I will it's shifting from the native niche to nearby niche, right? So the nearby niche will be called as invaded niche, right? Because this is where they are moving from the native niche, right? So that can shift the habitat niche, right? Now, what will happen? We know in the ecological. Okay. So what will happen if the new individuals, or if the individuals moves from native niche to the invaded niche, right here, eventually we know from the ecology and the evolutionary perspective. So this is your native niche, and this is your invaded niche. Eventually, if there is something which disrupts here, or eventually what happens is that the native niche starts evolving in a different way because of the maybe food resources available, which is something different, or because of the leeward side is getting less what do you say, wave breaking and all. Whereas in the invaded niche, if there are more wave breaking, or if there are different forms of the food available, both will start getting selected, and that is an example of disruptive selection. So in disruptive selection, what will happen? Native niche and the invaded niche both will start selecting parallelly, and eventually what will happen? Eventually they may speciate. So that could link to the speciation. It means a formation of a new species. And why we call it as sympatric? Because both are happening in the same particular condition, in the same particular similar particular niche, which is not broken by any, or which is not breaking by any geographical barrier, right? It is just because they might have moved into the new invaded niche and then eating on some different food material feeding, or because of some of the abiotic factor like wave and currents. It's a hypothetical situation just to make you explain. However, the example which is shown here is true, where you can see that the depth acted as a reason for sympatric selection speciation. So what happened is that initially this red and blue both were present in the same location, right? Eventually at the depth, due to in the depth the red color was favored, and in the depth blue was favored, and in another depth red was favored. And eventually what happened, that because of the coloration, the males, I mean the females, will not choose a blue male. So what happens if the female from the red will not choose a blue male, and the female from the red male do not choose a red male, right? I hope it's understandable that the red female will not choose blue male and blue female will not choose red male. Eventually, they will start diverging, and then that can cause sympatric speciation. So this is one example on the depth. And the second example, which is a very good, I really like this one because it's an example of a Baltic Sea. I work on seaweed and especially on brown algae, and this is a very good example of brown algae, where the fucus, which is a fucoid algae coming to the brown algae, it's diverged or it's speciated into Fucus radians, Fucus vesiculosus, and Fucus serratus. Just because the Baltic Sea, you can see there is a very huge natural gradient of the salinity. So because of the gradient shift of the salinity, the one species of Fucus is present exclusively in one part where there are low pH, low salinity. Serratus is available in one part and vesiculosus is available in one part. So that because of the abiotic factors, that is the salinity, this all three has diverged and has formed three particular species, right? So now you can see that there could be possible implications because of the ecological interactions, and this was also very well reviewed in 2006 by Reinhard Berger, the condition for speciation through intra-specific competition. So we are only talking about intra-specific competition at the moment, right? Now let us go back here. Another possible implications, what it is, we all know that there are ontogenic niche shift. Don't be worried about the term. Ontogenic niche shift means that because of the foraging disabilities, it means because of the ability to feed and because of the predation risk. So nobody wants to get eaten by the predator, right? So prey So in order to save themselves from the predator, and in order to have a good food, and so many of the organisms causes, I mean, moves from one location to another location in the uh, different life stages. For example, you have in the juvenile, there is a fish which lives in the mangrove or the seagrass bed, but as and just to survive, once it is survived, it moved to the coral reef or deep mud flat where it mature, right? And then after maturation, so even the small one will not move to the adult habitat, and then finally it will go back again in the juvenile habitat to the mangrove or the seagrass, right? uh, you may be thinking that it looks like a very known concept, because we have catadromus and we have anadromous movement, right? So in catadromus, what happens that the adults lives in the fresh water and goes the sea to spawn. For example, in most of the cases of eels, not most of the cases, but the examples are eel. Whereas anadromous, born in freshwater, spends most of their lives in salt water and then return again to the freshwater to spawn, and that is salmon, right? So now you understand that what this ecological interaction can do. What are the possible implications? First is that that can lead to the habitat niche shift, and then with the habitat niche shift, there could be possible disruptive selection, and that can lead to sympatric speciations. Two examples I gave you here, one with the red fish and the blue fish, and the other one is the fucus in the Baltic Sea. The second one is that because in order to have a good food and to not have the predation risk, the organism move from one to other sites uh, across their life stages. And we have two good examples here, catadromus and anadromus. So catadromus, who lives in the freshwater and go to the sea to spawn, whereas anadromus, who born in the freshwater and then go in the salt water, lives when born in freshwater, goes to salt water, return to freshwater, spawn, and the good example is salmon fish, right? So we have very thought-provoking papers such as what drives ontogenic niche shifts of fishes in coral reef ecosystem. So likewise, we have several thought-provoking papers which you should read if you are interested, right? Now, we go and we now we know that there are ecological interactions. We know that what it is and why they are important. But now it is time to learn that what are the different ecological interactions exist, and how the different organisms are adapted either to interact or to avoid, right? You will understand why I am saying to avoid, because we will see prey predator mechanism as well. So first is, what does I mean, I hope that you remember the ecological hierarchical level, which starts, let's say, with the cell, then organ, I mean, then cell, tissues, organs. But we are not going at the cellular scale, so we are not even considering up to individual. So from individual, it will go to the population. Population will make the community will make the ecosystem, and ecosystem, all ecosystems together forms the biosphere, right? So I didn't put that slide because that is well understood. So let us go what individual means. So individual, it is either one particular individual, for example, in this case, one snail, or otherwise group of interconnected polyps, which you can also call as colony. Example in the sea anemone, or example in the other nidarians, or otherwise also even coral reefs, you have several polyps which are interconnected with each other, right? So that is the meaning of individual and colony. Okay. Now, the second is population. What population is? A group of individual that lives in the same environment, and then they mix among each other frequently. Now, in order to explain this population, I have a very good video which was viral in Twitter. I don't know if you have seen, but I will not miss this chance to show you, even if it takes 5 minutes. Wait. Okay, see this. I am not maximizing because it will be slow otherwise. So you see carefully, huh? Okay, let us repeat one more time and then I will explain. Okay, let us go back to the slide. So what did you observe? What it is that one group of population, I mean one group of this, I'm considering whole penguin, since they are living in the same environment and interacting with each other, I am considering it as one population. But then let us divide in two groups. Okay, so one group is coming from sea to land, okay, maybe in order to rest or whatever it is, and then the other group is going from land towards sea, right? In between they interacted, they stopped, they interacted, and one particular penguin, instead of going toward land, started to go toward the sea again with the second group. So another penguin from the group one came and asked, and then the guy who was going toward the sea again came back to the first group. What is happening? There is this group which is going toward the sea, and the jumping one which is coming from the sea and going toward the land. And then there is one particular penguin which you see here, right? Got confused and was going. Now this guy went, and then I don't know what sort of communication, whatever it is, but then now they came back again to the first group. So this is a population. This is a population because they are interacting and they are living in the same environment, and these are the group of individuals. Also the population level interaction happens in order to mate. Okay, so when two individuals are mating, that also is a good example of ecological interaction at the population level. Okay, similarly, wait, let me start the pointer. Okay. Similarly, when the group of potentially interacting population, it doesn't matter one species or other species. So, uh, a number of different individual belonging to different or the same species living in the same place forms the community, right? Now, good example to understand this interaction is that coral provides, not coral, coral reef provides a foundation for living all these fishes. So there will be holes where the worms will be living. There will be cervixes where the eels are living. Then we have several branching corals where other acts as a nursery and the breeding and feeding ground for these kind of fishes and invertebrates, right? So that is community. Don't confuse community with ecosystem, because in community we are talking only about the interacting population belonging to same and the different species living in the same place, right? Whereas in ecosystem we are not only talking about the community which are living in the same place in the same ecosystem, but also all the abiotic and the biotic factors combinedly, right? So when you see now in this particular coral reef, you see that not only the corals are there with the fishes, but also there is a water. I mean, just imagine there is a water, there is a other abiotic factors here. So that is an interaction at the ecosystem level. Last but not the least, we have biosphere, where entire living thing on the entire planet interacts not only among themselves but also with the environment. You will be confused by thinking that what kind of interaction it is at the, if we are talking about the whole biosphere. But then we have to remember two particular examples. One, is that a global carbon cycle, right? Where we are talking about what do you say? All the it's a global phenomenon, right? That because the carbon dioxide or methane or whatever the greenhouse gases are not only impacting marine ecosystem but also impacting the terrestrial ecosystem, and you cannot actually tease apart separately this because it's happening at a global scale. So whatever is happening at a global scale, that comes under interaction at the biosphere level. Also, you can see the sea surface temperature of the oceans, right? So what does it mean? That if the water is heating here, it doesn't matter that you are studying this particular area, because water is connected and slower, sooner or later, this will reach here, right? So kind of a connected system, and where you are considering the whole earth with the abiotic and the biotic component, that is the interaction at the biosphere level.